Back in my day, D&D was all about getting gold. But what happened? Why is it now that in 5th edition, we don't care about acquiring gold and we don't have any ways to spend gold? What happened to gold and how can we make gold good again? Let's talk about that. So when you look at D&D ages past, you used to adventure for gold. Gold was everything. Gold was all. It was the end all be all. You adventured for gold. You may have, of course, adventured for the sake of adventuring, but you would ultimately get gold. Why is that? It's because gold was your XP. The only way you leveled up is by getting that gold. Yeah, you did get some XP for killing monsters, but it was so insignificant compared to getting that gold. It was the common thing of if there were orcs defending a treasure hoard, it would be far more smart to avoid fighting and just steal the gold. You wouldn't want to get into a fight. Why would you risk dying when you could just get the gold in the first place? Now, the acquisition of gold was very, very important, but also something very important to consider is there was also a pretty decent gold sink. You would be spending a lot of gold to get that gold. You wouldn't have a whole bunch of magical items and magical spells and a whole bunch of various things that allow you to get a lot of freebies. A lot of that stuff you had to do by hand. Or very importantly is you had to hire people to do things and get things done. You had to spend gold to make that gold, and it was a great economy. You'd eventually get more gold, and hopefully later down the line, maybe you could even do some really fun things with that we'll get into in a moment. So we beat down doors, we delve into crypts, we fight dragons for this gold, not for the adventure, not for the glory, but for that sweet, sweet gold. Yeah, of course, you can go for the glory as a side effect, but baby, you want that gold. That was then, and this is now. What the heck happened? Why did gold go from being everything to being nothing? Well, there's several factors for that. First off is XP. So back in the day, all the classes leveled up at various degrees. The thief leveled up quicker than the fighter. The fighter leveled up quicker than the magic user. And of course, all the various different classes leveled up at various degrees. This created what would be considered now is a strange class economy where everyone would be at different levels. In fact, the thief leveled up so quickly compared to maybe the magic user or the elf that the thief could be even 2 levels ahead of everyone else. That's not really something you would consider in today's modern games. You would typically want everyone to be at around the same page, if not at the same level, then maybe at most a 1 level degree of difference. Another aspect of why gold went with the dodo is XP. How many games of modern games do you actually see XP being used? I don't see that terribly much. I typically see, if I ever ask anybody, oh, how's your game played? It is probably, if not even 9/10 of the time, maybe even maybe 19 out of 20 times, maybe even more than that, it is Milestone. Milestone is just the go-to. Milestone is so simple, so quick, so easy. Instead of having to adventure to all these various places, do all these various things, you instead say, hey, you accomplish this one important task, you get a level up. It's very simple. It's very just modern. It makes sense. And with that, XP is out of the way. We don't care about how many monsters you kill. We don't care how much gold you acquire. We just care about you doing one substantial thing again and again. So on the flip side of acquiring the gold is spending the gold. What the heck do you spend gold on in modern D&D? Well, besides acquiring full plate, you're not buying food, you're not worrying about your little hirelings, you're not worrying about a lot of these things that used to be a thing you would consider back in the day because nowadays the game runs a certain type of tempo. We have games where you don't have to worry about the survival mechanics. We have a whole bunch of mechanics that are eschewed away because we have spells that do away with a lot of the problems at hand. Acquiring gold became worthless and spending gold became worthless. Gold simply just disappeared. And it's really sad to see that because I find that acquiring riches is a lot of the fun of Dungeons and Dragons. You go into these dungeons and you fight these dragons, and those dragons are hoarding gold. But nowadays, I feel like if you put down a hoard of gold, and players would be like, "Oh, okay." But if you gave them at least like one magical item, they'll be like, "Oh, the magic item! Oh, that's so cool." And I don't know. It just feels so sad. Gold should be fun. Gold should be entertaining. You should be able to spend your riches. You should be able to acquire things. There should be a drive to get that gold, which is not there anymore. So the question here is, how do we make gold good again? Well, in 5th edition, you'd have to put incentives behind getting that gold. What are those incentives? Well, we're actually seeing that in the playtest already of 1D&D of Bastions. That is something that is, of course, a holdout from ages past, where you, at 9th level, or if you were the fighter, you could cheat this out early, you could get a stronghold. And when you get that stronghold, people would flock to you, and you'd be a baron, and eventually try and raise your stakes and try and become a greater person and raise a small kingdom. That was part of the game. You eventually get to the domain play. You'd spend a bejesus ton of gold acquiring that domain. You'd be spending a bunch of gold to improve your domain, but then eventually your domain would flourish, and then you would say, hey, I got to impact the world. I've got this little domain here, and all these things that you can see, that's my domain. That's awesome. So natively in 5e, that just wasn't a thing, but of course, once MCDM brought out his Strongholds and Followers, that became a bit more back in the zeitgeist of modern gamers, and we're of course seeing that Wizards of the Coast is following suit in that regard. But I don't think Bastion should just be the end-all be-all money sink in D&D. I think there needs to be more. Now, where does that money sink come in? That's tough. I mean, you can sink it back into repairing weapons and armors, and for the spellcasters getting new focuses and books, and you can go into that, but of course that's just very incremental, very tiny money upkeep potentially. I think the obvious go-to answer is magical shops, where you drop a ludicrous amount of gold to get that magic item you so desperately want. I'm personally not a fan of magic shops. I think magic shops remove some of the magic of magic. I really love when my players earn a magical item by fighting a foe or climbing to the top of the mountain, because it has a story attached to it. I find that when you have magical shops, you buy the thing that you want. You don't really consider like, oh, I got the gold from doing this or whatever. You typically just think, oh yeah, I bought this magical item at a shop, and I feel like it just ruins the oomph of magic, But to each their own. I know a lot of people like magical shops, allowing players to, instead of having to deal with whatever magic items they're dealt with, they instead get to choose the ones that they want. I know that player agency is very important to some people, but some people are perfectly fine as well with making do with what they've got. There's, of course, a huge number of things you can have gold sinks in your game to make gold good again. That can be donating to the church. That can be helping out all of the orphans. That can be acquiring that tavern so you can start up a tavern, It can be so many different things, and sky is the limit, but you have to push the incentive for gold to be in the game in the first place, which once again, Wizards of the Coast is going to be, it looks like they're going to be trying to do that with the Bastion system. So I'm looking forward to that, but I also want to hear from you all. Do you care about gold at all? Do you think that it is just simply a relic of the past? Do you just want to adventure for adventure's sake? Do you just want to deal with magical items? Or do you think gold deserves a spot? Do you think gold deserves a place to shine? How do you use gold in your games? Do you have any gold sinks at all? Anything creative you've done? Maybe you've got to throw 1,000,000 gold in the wishing well to acquire a wish. Something like that, right? Go ahead and tell me your thoughts on gold, because I would love to hear it. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you to my wonderful patrons. Thank you for subscribing, for clicking like, and for commenting down below. Thank you all so very much, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Of all the money sinks you can possibly have in your games, I think the most damning one would be taxes. Every single time I've ever run a game and there's some sort of tax involved, whether whenever you leave the city or whenever you buy a piece of property and there's an additional tax, players will lead a riot, an absolute war to get rid of those taxes.